What do agents need to know about how to perform in a declining real estate market? I've worked in the real estate industry for many years, represented close to 3,000 clients and sold over almost $1 billion in properties. I've seen a market at the very bottom, which you would call an extreme buyer's market, and now I've seen two market peaks, which you would call seller markets, where there's just an incredible amount of buyer activity and buyer demand, which is in the favor of the sellers. It appears that we are at a peak historically in the market, which is the seller's market, going from anywhere from a few weeks to a few months of supply. A balanced market would be 6 months of supply, which means if no other homes came to market within 6 months, all of those homes would be sold relative to the demand. So when it's really inventory is really low, it means we're in a heavily seller favored market, which is where we've been. And when the inventory is very high, the buyers have a lot more choices and a lot more leverage, less buyer demand, more units available, and that is indicative of a buyer's market. So where we're at in that trajectory right now is we are seeing that prices are continuing to escalate. At the same time, we're seeing inventory start to creep up. And then there's a number of pockets across the country where you've seen year over year 15% or more drops in the first quarter, which is indicative of what you start to see during market top. You see decreasing demand. We see the supply go up, which is indicative of that, while prices are still escalating. So we're reaching near the peak of this real estate market. So what happens in a declining market? Well, many sellers continue to price ahead of the market, and then the days on market continue to creep up, and then they have to make reductions to try to chase the market down and end up costing themselves more money. So you need to consider, when you talk to your clients, about making sure they understand the three pricing strategies: auction or event style pricing, slightly above perceived market value, or aspirational. You don't want to be pricing aspirational typically in a declining market, because you're pricing ahead of where the market is, and in many cases the market is kind of falling underneath of your feet. The most important things that you need to know as an agent in this market is, one, you have to have a plan. Many agents have gotten into the industry at a time where the market is moving very fast, very limited, and actually poor marketing is enough to get homes sold, and there have not been any consequences for taking overpriced listings. What's going to happen as the days on market continue to creep up, and we see this in every cycle, is that there's a flight to quality for the sellers. They realize that it's not, in the absence of value, then price is the only commodity. The value that we bring as agents in an extremely intense seller's market is much less than when we have a more balanced market. And so as the buyer demand decreases, the enticement, the marketing, the professionalism, the experience, the team that you work with, the service experience that you give to your client is what's going to be the differentiator. Communicating that to your clients so that they know that, hey, these pieces have performed. This digital marketing is going out. Here's the number of impressions that you've got. Here are how many inquiries that you've had. Here's the feedback from the showings. We haven't had any showings, which is also its own feedback. No showings does not necessarily mean the agent hasn't done their job. It may mean that the seller actually chose a pricing strategy that was too aggressive. If you price something 20 to 30% above market, I can guarantee you're going to get no showings, and people are going to say you're crazy. And then if you were to look at that and say, oh, well, the agent didn't do their job, that may not be the case. It is a two-way street, and there has to be communication going. There has to be a connection and a consultation happening between you and the client. So the keys are having a plan and communicating that plan, as well as having tactical empathy for taking care of that client so that you can help them to navigate this changing market.